A scream tore through the first-class cabin like shattered glass. 12-year-old Amara's arm hung at an impossible angle bone, pressing against torn skin, blood pooling on the cream leather seat. Flight attendant Vanessa stood frozen, white knuckles gripping a blood-soaked towel, face drained of all color. The cockpit door swung open. A man stepped into the aisle. Every passenger turned to stone. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Nobody could have predicted what would happen next, would change everything forever. Before we dive into how this nightmare unfolded, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. If you believe every child deserves to fly with dignity, regardless of skin color, smash that like button right now. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this story will shake you to your core and remind you why speaking up against injustice matters more than ever. Now let's rewind 6 hours and see how an innocent girl's dream flight turned into a parent's worst nightmare. The morning sun blazed over Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, temperature already climbing to 92 degrees Fahrenheit by 7:30 a.m. Inside the bustling terminal, 12-year-old Amara Jennings stood beside her grandmother, clutching a worn copy of Hidden Figures against her yellow flowered dress. Her cornrow braids swayed as she bounced on her white sneakers, eyes sparkling with excitement mixed with nervousness. "Now, baby, you remember to call your mama. The second that plane touches down in Los Angeles, you hear me?" Grandmother Loretta's voice cracked as she pulled Amara into another tight embrace. At 65 years old, Loretta's silver-streaked hair framed a face etched with decades of wisdom and worry. Tears rolled down her weathered brown cheeks. "I will, Grandma, I promise." Amara squeezed back, breathing in the familiar scent of cocoa butter and lavender that always clung to her grandmother's cardigan. "And you be polite to everyone, even if—" Loretta paused, choosing her words carefully. "Even if they don't show you the same kindness. You're a Jennings. We hold our heads high no matter what." Amara nodded solemnly, though she didn't fully understand the weight behind those words. This was her first time flying alone, her first time in first class, made possible by the frequent flyer miles her mother had been saving for 2 years. 2 years since the divorce split their family between coasts. 2 years of video calls and holiday visits. Today, Amara would finally see her mother again. They approached the check-in counter, where a blonde woman in a crisp navy uniform looked up from her computer screen. Her name tag read Jennifer. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw Amara's boarding pass. First class, Jennifer's eyebrows lifted. She picked up the ticket, examining it front and back under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Honey, are you sure this is your ticket?" "Yes, ma'am." Amara's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Where are your parents?" Jennifer's fingers hovered over her keyboard, not typing, just waiting. "My mama's in Los Angeles. That's where I'm flying to." Jennifer's eyes narrowed. "And who bought this ticket?" Loretta stepped forward, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Her mother purchased that ticket with miles she earned fair and square. Is there a problem?" "I just need to verify." Jennifer picked up her phone, speaking in hushed tones to someone Amara couldn't see. Minutes stretched like taffy while other passengers breezed through adjacent lanes. Finally, Jennifer printed the boarding pass with visible reluctance. Gate B-17. Boarding starts in 45 minutes. No smile. No have a nice flight. Just cold efficiency. Walking toward security, Loretta squeezed Amara's hand. "You see that, baby? Sometimes people are going to question whether you belong somewhere. Don't you ever let them make you feel small. You belong anywhere you have a right to be." Amara hugged her grandmother one final time at the security checkpoint, waving until Loretta's figure disappeared into the crowd. Then she was alone, joining the river of travelers flowing toward the gates. The security line moved slowly. Amara clutched her book and carry-on bag, trying to ignore the stares from other passengers when they glimpsed her first-class boarding pass hanging from her neck. A middle-aged white woman in pearls actually did a double take, whispering something to her husband that made him turn and look too. Past security, Amara found a seat near Gate B-17 and opened Hidden Figures to Chapter 3. She'd read it twice already, but the story of black women mathematicians at NASA never got old. Maybe one day she'd work for NASA too, or become a pilot like her father used to talk about before the divorce. The gate area filled gradually. Businessmen in suits, families with strollers, a group of college students heading to California for spring break. The loudspeaker crackled to life, announcing boarding would begin shortly, first-class passengers first. Amara stood, smoothing her yellow dress, checking that her boarding pass was ready. Her heart hammered with excitement, and something else. Something that felt like the weight of invisible eyes tracking her every move. First-class passengers welcome aboard, the gate agent announced. Amara joined the line. The woman in pearls stood directly behind her, close enough that Amara could smell her expensive perfume. Close enough to hear her stage whisper to her husband. Can you believe they let children fly first class unaccompanied these days? What is this world coming to? Amara's cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes forward, clutching her book tighter. The jet bridge stretched ahead like a tunnel into the unknown. The aircraft door loomed ahead, and Amara stepped from the jet bridge into a world she'd only seen in movies. First class. The cabin glowed with soft lighting that made everything look golden. Seats the color of rich caramel leather stretched in spacious rows, each one wide enough to feel like a throne. Personal entertainment screens gleamed on every seatback. The air smelled like new car mixed with expensive coffee. Good morning, welcome aboard. A flight attendant with perfect blonde hair twisted into an elegant bun smiled at passengers ahead of Amara. Her red lipstick matched the silk scarf at her neck. Her name tag identified her as Vanessa Hartley, Senior Flight Attendant. Amara found her seat, 2A. Window seat, just like she'd hoped. She slid into the leather embrace, running her hands over the armrests, marveling at the legroom that seemed to stretch forever compared to the economy seat she'd flown in once before to visit her grandmother in Atlanta. Excuse me. Vanessa's voice cut through Amara's wonder. Sweetheart, are you sure you're in the right section? Economy class is toward the back of the aircraft. Amara looked up, clutching her boarding pass. Yes, ma'am. I'm in seat 2A. Vanessa's perfectly lined eyes narrowed. She plucked the boarding pass from Amara's hand, holding it at arm's length, as if it might be contaminated. Chelsea, can you come here a moment? Another flight attendant appeared younger with auburn hair pulled into a ponytail. Chelsea glanced at the boarding pass, then at Amara, then back at Vanessa, with uncertainty flickering across her freckled face. This seems legitimate, Chelsea whispered, though not quietly enough. The system shows seat 2A is assigned to Jennings A. I find it very odd. Vanessa's tone could have frozen water. She turned to Amara. How did you get this ticket? My mama bought it with her miles. Amara's voice trembled slightly. Why was this happening? She had every right to be here. A passenger settling into seat 3C looked over with obvious disapproval. Mr. Patterson, according to the monogrammed leather briefcase he was stowing overhead, wore a gray suit that probably cost more than Loretta's monthly rent. His silver hair gleamed with pomade, and his pale blue eyes radiated cold assessment. Vanessa and Chelsea exchanged another look heavy with unspoken meaning. Finally, Vanessa thrust the boarding pass back at Amara. Fine. Sit down. But keep your voice down. And don't touch anything you don't understand how to use properly. Each word landed like a small slap. Amara sank into her seat face, burning with humiliation. Tears prickled behind her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. Grandma Loretta said, "Hold your head high." She opened Hidden Figures to a random page, not actually reading, just staring at words that blurred together. Around her, other passengers boarded. An older Asian businessman took the seat across the aisle, barely glancing up from his phone. A wealthy-looking white couple in their 50s settled into row 4, the woman's diamond rings catching the light as she gestured animatedly about something. Every single person seemed to belong here, except Amara. Vanessa moved through the cabin with practiced grace-hanging coats, offering champagne to adult passengers, smiling warmly at everyone. Everyone except Amara. When Vanessa passed row 2, her entire demeanor shifted to cold efficiency. No smile, no welcome. Just the barest acknowledgement of Amara's existence. The public address system crackled. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Flight 743 with service to Los Angeles. Flight time today will be approximately 4 hours and 30 minutes. Flight attendants prepare for departure. The cabin door sealed with a heavy thunk. Amara was committed now. No turning back. The aircraft pushed away from the gate, and through her window she watched the Atlanta terminal slide past. This should have been exciting. This should have been the adventure she'd been dreaming about for months. Instead, anxiety coiled in her stomach like a snake. She could feel Vanessa's gaze on her from the galley, could sense Mr. Patterson's disapproval radiating from behind. The engines roared to life. The plane taxied toward the runway, vibrating with barely contained power. Amara gripped her armrest as they accelerated faster, until the ground dropped away and Atlanta became a patchwork quilt of buildings and streets far below. She was flying. She was actually flying in first class. So why did she feel so small? 1 hour into the flight, the seatbelt sign blinked off with a soft chime. Amara had been watching clouds drift past her window, trying to lose herself in their cotton candy shapes, trying to forget the hostile atmosphere that seemed to thicken the air around her seat. Vanessa emerged from the galley, pushing a gleaming metal cart loaded with covered dishes that released mouth-watering aromas. She approached row 4 first, her smile blooming wide and warm. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Chen. For our main course today, we're offering herb-roasted chicken with baby vegetables and wild rice, or pan-seared salmon with lemon caper sauce and asparagus. Which would you prefer?" Mrs. Chen chose the salmon. Mr. Chen requested the chicken. Vanessa served them with practiced elegance, placing each dish with a flourish, ensuring their champagne glasses remained full, offering fresh ground pepper with genuine warmth in her voice. She moved to Mr. Patterson next. "And for you, sir, the salmon is particularly excellent today." "I'll have the salmon, thank you, Vanessa." Mr. Patterson actually smiled, a rare crack in his stern facade. Then Vanessa's cart reached row 2. Her expression shifted like clouds covering the sun. The warmth evaporated. Her movements became mechanical, almost rough. "You get what's left." She didn't ask, didn't offer choices. She grabbed a tray from the bottom rack of her cart and practically slammed it onto Amara's tray table. Liquid sloshed from the plastic cup, orange juice bleeding across the beige plastic. Amara stared at her meal. A dried-out piece of chicken, edges curled and brown. 3 carrot sticks that looked limp and tired. A dinner roll so hard it could probably break a window. Meanwhile, she could see the salmon on Mr. Patterson's tray, perfectly pink, garnished with fresh herbs and lemon slices that made her mouth water. "Excuse me," Amara's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Could I please have the salmon instead?" Vanessa turned back, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched in disbelief. "I already told you. That's all we have available for you. You should be grateful we're feeding you at all." The words hit like a physical blow. Amara's hands shook as she picked up her fork. Grateful. For scraps, while everyone else ate like royalty. From row 3, Mr. Patterson's voice carried clearly. Maybe if she'd stayed in economy where she belongs, she'd get an economy meal and be happy with it. Quiet laughter rippled through nearby seats. Not loud, not overt, but there, undeniable. The kind of laughter that said, "We all know the joke, and you're it." Chelsea passed by carrying coffee, saw Amara's tray, and her step faltered. Her eyes widened slightly. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again, hurrying toward the galley where Vanessa was reorganizing supplies. "Vanessa, that's not right." Chelsea's whisper wasn't quite quiet enough to be private. "She's just a child. Why did you give her the crew meal? She needs to learn." Vanessa's response was ice cold. Learn what happens when people get ideas above their station. Amara set down her fork, unable to swallow past the lump in her throat. She turned toward the window, watching America slide past 35,000 feet below. Somewhere down there, people were going about normal days. Somewhere down there, maybe things were fair. A few rows back, Mrs. Whitaker sat watching the entire exchange. A black woman in her 50s, wearing an elegant burgundy suit. She'd been silent since boarding, nose buried in a legal brief. Now, she closed her folder slowly, her jaw tight with recognition. She'd seen this before. Lived this before. In the 1970s, when she'd been one of the first black women at her law firm eating lunch alone because nobody wanted to sit with her. The scenarios changed, but the song remained the same. Mrs. Whitaker wanted to say something, wanted to stand up and demand they treat this child with basic human decency. But fear held her tongue. Fear that if she spoke up, they'd turn that treatment on her, too. Fear that had kept her silent for too many years. Amara picked up her book again, though tears made the word swim incomprehensibly. She would not cry, would not give them the satisfaction, but inside a question burned. Why? Why did the color of her skin mean she deserved less? Deserved cruelty instead of kindness? Deserved to be treated as though her very presence was an insult? The plane hummed through cloudless sky, carrying Amara toward Los Angeles and her mother's arms. But right now, those arms felt impossibly far away. 2 hours into the flight, Amara's bladder sent urgent signals she could no longer ignore. She'd been holding it, afraid to draw more attention to herself, but biology wouldn't wait. She unbuckled carefully, standing in the aisle, glancing toward the first-class lavatory, just 3 rows ahead. The bathroom door stood open, vacant, the light off. Amara took 1 step forward. "Where exactly do you think you're going?" Vanessa materialized from nowhere, blocking the aisle with her body arms crossed over her uniform. "I need to use the restroom, ma'am." Amara kept her voice small, polite, everything Grandma Loretta taught her about surviving in spaces where you weren't wanted. "This lavatory is reserved for premium passengers only." Vanessa's red lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You'll need to use the facilities in economy class." Amara blinked, confused. "But I am in first class. My seat is 2A. Right there." She pointed to her window seat. "I don't care what your ticket says." Vanessa's voice rose just enough that nearby passengers looked up from their phones and magazines. "You clearly don't belong in this section. Walk to the back and use the economy restroom." Heat flooded Amara's face. The economy bathroom was at least 20 rows behind them, past the galley, past the curtain that separated first class from the rest of the plane, past rows and rows of strangers who would all see her walk of shame. "Please." Amara hated how her voice cracked. "I really need to go. The bathroom is right there, and it's empty." "Are you arguing with me?" Vanessa stepped closer, towering over Amara's small frame. "I gave you an instruction. Follow it. Now." Mr. Patterson looked up from his Wall Street Journal. "Just do what she says, kid. Stop making a scene and causing problems for everyone." Other passengers watched with expressions ranging from discomfort to approval. Nobody spoke up. Nobody said, "This is wrong." The silence felt like complicity. Amara's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. She turned back toward her seat, humiliation burning through every cell in her body. She'd walk to economy. She'd endure the stairs. She'd survive this like she'd survived everything else. But before she could take more than 2 steps, Vanessa's hand shot out and grabbed Amara's shoulder. "I said move faster." The grip tightened, fingers digging into soft flesh. "You're hurting me." Amara tried to pull away, but Vanessa's manicured nails only dug deeper. "Then maybe you should listen better." Vanessa yanked Amara backward, off balance. Amara stumbled her free hand, reaching for the seat to steady herself. Vanessa grabbed her other arm, the one that had been hanging at her side, and twisted it behind Amara's back in one sharp, vicious movement. The sound came first, a crack like a branch snapping, crisp, decisive, wrong. Then came the pain. White-hot agony exploding from Amara's arm, radiating through her entire body in waves that stole her breath and her vision. She heard screaming from very far away and realized dimly it was her own voice shredding her throat raw. Her arm hung at an angle that physics shouldn't allow. Where her forearm should have been straight, it bent halfway between elbow and wrist. Bone pressed against skin from the inside, creating a tent of flesh that looked grotesque and impossible. Blood seeped through a tear in her skin, soaking into her yellow dress, dripping onto the pristine first-class carpet. Vanessa released her grip and stumbled backward face, draining of color, until she matched the white of her uniform blouse. Her hands shook as she grabbed a white linen napkin from the nearby galley, pressing it against Amara's arm. The cloth turned red immediately. "Oh my God." Mrs. Whitaker's voice cut through the shocked silence. "What did you do? What did you just do to that baby?" Chelsea appeared, tablet clattering to the floor from nerveless fingers. "Vanessa, you broke her arm. You actually broke her arm." Amara collapsed into her seat, cradling her ruined arm against her chest pain, coming in waves that made her vision go spotty. Tears streamed down her face unchecked now. She couldn't breathe right. Couldn't think past the agony. Couldn't understand how asking to use a bathroom had led to this nightmare. I didn't mean to. Vanessa's voice came out strangled thin. She was resisting. She wouldn't listen. I just wanted her to cooperate. She's 12 years old. Mrs. Whitaker was on her feet now, fury overriding years of conditioned silence. She weighs maybe 90 pounds. What kind of force did you use? Mr. Patterson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Well, if she had just done what she was told from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Actions have consequences. Comment number 1 right now if you think Mr. Patterson is absolutely wrong and this should never happen to any child. Hit that like button if you believe Vanessa should face serious consequences for assaulting a minor. Subscribe, because what happens next will restore your faith that sometimes justice does prevail. But here's the question nobody on that plane could answer yet. Who would hold Vanessa accountable? Who would stand up for Amara when every authority figure seemed aligned against her? The answer was walking toward them at that very moment, and when he arrived, everything would change. Chelsea's shoes clicked rapidly against the cabin floor as she ran toward the front of the plane. Her hands shook as she entered the code on the cockpit door panel. The heavy door clicked, then swung inward. "Captain, we have an emergency in the cabin." Her voice cracked with panic. The cockpit was a cave of blinking lights and glowing screens, 2 pilots silhouetted against the endless blue sky, visible through the windscreen. The pilot in the left seat, the captain, turned his head. Captain Elijah Jennings had been flying commercial aircraft for 15 years. He'd handled engine failures, severe turbulence, medical emergencies, and once an attempted hijacking. His 4 gold stripes marked him as one of the most experienced pilots in the fleet. At 42 years old, his hands were steady on the controls, his voice always calm in crisis. But when Chelsea said a child's been injured, something in his chest constricted. "I'll handle it. Take the controls, Marcus." He spoke to his first officer, already unbuckling from his seat. "We're at cruise altitude, everything stable," Marcus confirmed, a younger white pilot with barely 2 years on the job. "Go." Elijah stepped out of the cockpit, his tall frame filling the doorway, shoulders broad in his dark blue uniform with its crisp white shirt and navy tie. His dark skin caught the cabin lights as he moved into first class. His eyes, sharp and assessing from years of scanning instruments, swept the cabin. Then they found her. A little girl slumped in seat 2A. Brown skin, cornrow braids, a yellow dress now stained dark red, an arm bent at an angle that made his stomach turn. Tears streaming down a face scrunched in agony. A face he'd know anywhere. Time stopped. Sound muted. The entire world narrowed to that seat, that child, that impossible reality. Amara. His voice came out strangled, barely recognizable as his own. He covered the distance in 3 strides, dropping to his knees in the aisle beside her seat, hands hovering over her shoulders, afraid to touch, afraid he'd hurt her more. "Baby. Baby, it's Daddy. I'm here. I'm right here." The cabin went silent. Every conversation stopped. Every passenger turned. Vanessa's face, already pale, went absolutely bloodless. Vanessa took a step backward, the bloody napkin falling from her fingers to the carpet. "You're her father. You're her father." Chelsea stood frozen, one hand pressed to her mouth. Amara looked up through her tears, pain momentarily overridden by shock and relief. "Daddy, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Seattle." "I switched routes, baby girl. Wanted to surprise you. Wanted to fly you to Mama myself." Elijah's voice broke on the last word. His hands were shaking now, hovering over her arm, seeing the bone pressing against skin, the blood, the unnatural angle. 15 years of emergency training kicked in. "Don't move. Don't try to move your arm. I need to see what happened." He looked up, and his eyes found Vanessa. In that moment, every ounce of warmth drained from his expression, replaced by something cold and terrible. "Who did this to my daughter?" Silence stretched like pulled taffy. Then, Amara voice small and broken. "Her. The flight attendant. I just wanted to use the bathroom and she grabbed me and my arm. Elijah stood slowly, rising to his full height of 6 feet 2 inches. He turned to face Vanessa, and the force of his gaze made her take another step back. "You did this." Not a question. A statement heavy as a judge's gavel. "You broke my daughter's arm." Captain I. She was being difficult. She wouldn't listen. I didn't mean for. Vanessa's words tumbled over each other. Desperate, incoherent. She's 12 years old. Each word came out measured, controlled, which somehow made them more terrifying than if he'd shouted. She weighs 95 pounds. She was flying alone to see her mother. "And you assaulted her on my aircraft." Mr. Patterson cleared his throat, attempting to interject. "Captain, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. The girl was out of line earlier and—" Elijah's head snapped toward him. "You will not speak. You will sit in your seat and you will be silent. Do you understand me?" Mr. Patterson's mouth clicked shut. He'd never been spoken to that way in his life. But something in the captain's eyes made argument impossible. Mrs. Whitaker stood up, her voice steady and clear. "Captain Jennings, I witnessed everything. Your daughter did absolutely nothing wrong." She asked politely to use the lavatory. This woman, this flight attendant, told her she couldn't use the first-class bathroom despite having a first-class ticket. When your daughter tried to go back to her seat, Vanessa grabbed her and twisted her arm with excessive force. I heard the bone break. Other passengers began nodding. The Asian businessman spoke up. "It's true. The child was polite the entire flight. The flight attendant has been treating her terribly since boarding." Even Mrs. Chen from row 4 added quietly, "We saw what happened. That woman hurt her on purpose." Elijah's jaw clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. He turned back to Vanessa, who had tears running down her own face, now mascara creating black tracks. "Captain, please. I have a family. I've been with this airline for 8 years. I never meant—" "Chelsea." Elijah's voice cut across Vanessa's pleading. "Get the first aid kit. Now. Then, I need you to contact the head flight attendant supervisor and inform them we have an assault case that will be reported to the FAA immediately upon landing." Chelsea nodded and ran. Elijah knelt beside Amara again, brushing tears from her cheeks with gentle thumbs. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I wasn't here. But I'm here now. Nobody's going to hurt you again. I promise you. Nobody." The plane flew on through perfect sky, but inside that cabin the atmosphere had shifted completely. The man they thought was just a pilot had revealed himself as something far more powerful. A father. And nothing in the world is more dangerous than a father whose child has been harmed. Chelsea returned with the first aid kit, her hands still trembling as she handed it to Captain Jennings. He opened it methodically, pulling out sterile gauze, antiseptic wipes, a triangular bandage that could serve as a sling. "This is going to hurt, sweetheart, but I need to clean the wound and stabilize your arm until we land." Elijah's voice had shifted into the calm, measured tone he used when talking passengers through turbulence. Steady. Reassuring. In control. Amara nodded, biting her lip hard enough to draw blood. She watched her father's face as he worked, seeing the muscle jumping in his jaw, the way his eyes kept going shiny before he blinked the emotion back. "I didn't know you were flying this plane, Daddy. I wanted to surprise you." He cleaned around the wound with gentle precision, each movement practiced from the medical training all pilots received. "I traded shifts with Captain Morrison 3 weeks ago. Been planning this the whole time. Wanted to hear your voice over the intercom when I welcomed passengers aboard. Wanted to tell you I love you from the cockpit when we landed. You can hear everything from up there." Elijah's hands paused for just a fraction of a second. The intercom system connects throughout the whole aircraft. Every word spoken in this cabin comes through speakers in the cockpit when we have them on. I heard everything, baby. Every single thing they said to you. Vanessa made a small sound like a wounded animal. Elijah didn't look at her. He finished securing the sling, supporting Amara's arm against her chest. "There. That's going to have to hold until we get you to a hospital." He stood pulling his phone from his uniform pocket, dialing a number he'd never hoped to use. "This is Captain Jennings, on Flight 743. I need to speak with Director Morrison immediately." Yes, I'll hold. The passengers sat in stunned silence. Mrs. Whitaker had taken the seat across the aisle from Amara, holding the girl's good hand, murmuring soft reassurances. Mr. Patterson stared out his window, face flushed red, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. The phone connected. Director Morrison, this is Elijah. I'm reporting an assault by a crew member on a minor passenger. He paused, listening. No, sir, this isn't a minor dispute. A flight attendant physically attacked a 12-year-old child and broke her arm. The child is my daughter. Another pause. His voice went even colder. Yes, sir. I am absolutely certain. I have multiple witness statements. The injury is severe. I want security waiting at the gate when we land, and I want this employee suspended immediately pending investigation. Vanessa swayed on her feet. Chelsea reached out to steady her, but Vanessa jerked away. Please. Vanessa's voice came out broken, desperate. Captain Jennings, please. I have 2 kids of my own. I need this job. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but please don't destroy my entire life. Elijah finally looked at her directly. You should have thought about your children before you decided my child wasn't good enough to breathe the same air as you. You should have thought about your job before you broke a little girl's arm because she had the audacity to exist in a space you didn't think she deserved. I didn't know she was your daughter. And that's exactly the problem. Elijah's voice could have cut diamonds. You didn't know. You saw a black child alone in first class, and you decided she didn't belong. You decided she deserved to be humiliated, starved, and when she dared to assert her basic human rights, you decided she deserved to be physically harmed. If she'd been a white child, would you have treated her the same way? Vanessa's silence was answer enough. The businessman in row 3 spoke up. Captain, I owe you and your daughter an apology. I sat here and watched. I should have said something. I should have stood up for her. Mrs. Chen nodded. We all should have. We're sorry. Only Mr. Patterson remained silent, jaw set, eyes forward. Elijah addressed the entire cabin. I need written statements from everyone who witnessed what happened. Chelsea will provide paper. I want dates, times, exactly what you saw and heard. These will be submitted to the FAA and potentially used in criminal proceedings. Criminal proceedings. The words hung in the air like thunderclouds. Vanessa's knees buckled. She sank into an empty seat, head in her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. Chelsea distributed paper and pens. Passengers began writing, some with shaking hands, others with fierce determination. Mrs. Whitaker's pen flew across the page. She'd been silent too many times in her life. Not today. Today she would speak truth to power and damn the consequences. Elijah knelt beside Amara again. How's the pain, baby? It hurts a lot. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But I'm glad you're here, Daddy. I'm so glad you're here. I'm not leaving your side. Not for 1 second. He kissed her forehead, smoothing back the braids that had come loose. Your grandma's going to be so proud of how brave you've been. She told me to hold my head high, no matter what. That's right. And you did. You held your head high when they tried to make you small. That takes more courage than most adults will ever have. Through the cockpit door, Marcus's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we're beginning our initial descent into Los Angeles. We'll be on the ground in 35 minutes. Elijah stood. I need to get back to the cockpit. Chelsea will stay with you. If you need anything at all, you tell her and she'll call me immediately. Okay. Amara Noded. Elijah turned to Vanessa one last time. You'll move to the last row in economy. You will have no contact with passengers. When we land, you'll be escorted off this aircraft by security. Do you understand? Vanessa could only nod, mascara-streaked face, a mask of devastation. As Elijah walked back toward the cockpit, every passenger watched him with a mixture of respect and awe. This was what it looked like when someone in power actually used that power to protect the vulnerable. This was justice swift and certain. The cockpit door closed behind him. Through it, faintly, passengers could hear him say to Marcus, Let's bring this bird home. I've got a little girl who needs a hospital. The plane angled downward, beginning its long glide toward Los Angeles International Airport. Outside the windows, the landscape shifted from desert browns to the sprawling urban patchwork of Southern California. The Pacific Ocean glittered in the distance, promising an end to this nightmare flight. Chelsea had moved Vanessa to the very last row of economy, then returned to sit near Amara, bringing water ice wrapped in cloth napkins to help with swelling pain medication from the medical kit that Elijah had approved over the close. Intercom. "I'm so sorry," Chelsea whispered for perhaps the 10th time. "I should have stopped her. I knew what she was doing was wrong, and I should have said something." Mrs. Whitaker, still sitting across the aisle, spoke gently. "We all should have. But you're young. She was your superior. I understand why you were afraid. That's not an excuse." Chelsea wiped at her eyes. "I became a flight attendant because I love people. I wanted to make travel special for everyone. Vanessa used to be kind too when she first started. But over the years she got bitter. Started saying things about how standards were declining, how people who couldn't afford first class shouldn't be there even if they had tickets. I thought it was just talk. I never imagined she'd actually hurt someone." Amara listened with her eyes half closed, pain medication making her drowsy. Her arm throbbed with each heartbeat despite the medicine, but having Chelsea and Mrs. Whitaker close helped. Having her father flying the plane helped most of all. Every few minutes, Elijah's voice would come through the speakers. Not announcements for passengers. Private questions, just for Amara. "How are you doing, sweetheart? Thumbs up if you're okay." Amara would raise her good hand, thumb extended, and somehow knew her father could see through the cockpit cameras that monitored the cabin. Mrs. Whitaker told stories to distract Amara from the pain. Stories about her own experiences as a young black lawyer in the 1970s, walking into courtrooms where judges didn't believe she was the attorney, where opposing counsel called her girl and honey instead of counselor, where she ate lunch alone every day because none of her white colleagues would sit with her. "But you know what, baby?" Mrs. Whitaker squeezed Amara's good hand gently. "Every single day I showed up. Every single day I did my job better than anyone else in that building. And eventually, slowly, things started to change. Not because people suddenly became good, but because we refused to disappear. We refused to accept that we didn't belong in spaces we had every right to occupy." "Does it ever stop hurting?" Amara asked quietly. "Not my arm. I mean the other hurt. The one that happens when people look at you like you're less than human." Mrs. Whitaker's eyes went shiny. "Oh, honey, I wish I could tell you it stops. But what I can tell you is that you get stronger. You build armor. And you find your people, the ones who see you as you are, who love you as you are. Like your father, that man flew across the country to be near you. That's the love that matters." Through the window, Los Angeles grew closer. The buildings resolved into individual structures. Cars became visible on freeways. The plane descended through thin clouds. In the cockpit, Elijah went through landing procedures with mechanical precision, his hands steady on the controls even as his heart raced. Marcus handled communications with air traffic control, while Elijah flew, trusting his captain to bring them down safely, despite the emotional storm raging beneath that calm exterior. "Tower, this is Flight 743. We have a medical emergency on board. Requesting priority ambulance standing by at the gate," Marcus reported. "Copy that, 743. Emergency services will be waiting. You're cleared to land, runway 24 left." The California coast appeared below, then the airport runways stretching like gray ribbons across the landscape. Elijah's voice came through the cabin speakers one more time. "Flight attendants, prepare for landing." Chelsea buckled into her jump seat, but not before adjusting Amara's seatbelt carefully around her injured arm. The ground rushed up. Tires kissed tarmac with barely a bump. Elijah had made thousands of landings in his career, but this one felt different. This one carried his daughter, his baby girl, his everything. The plane slowed, turned taxied toward the gate. Through the windows, Amara could see the ambulance, waiting lights, flashing silently. Could see airport security vehicles. Could see what looked like news cameras. How had the media found out already? Someone must have texted from the plane during the flight. In this age, nothing stayed private. The engines wound down. The seatbelt sign chimed off. But nobody moved. Every passenger seemed to understand this moment required witnessing. The main cabin door opened. 2 paramedics entered first, rushing to Amara with practiced efficiency. Behind them came 4 airport security officers. Behind them, shockingly, news cameras. But Amara only had eyes for the cockpit door. Waiting, waiting. It opened. Elijah stepped out and without a word walked straight to his daughter. The paramedics made room as he knelt beside her once more. "We're home, baby. We made it. You're safe now." Amara burst into tears, all the fear and pain and exhaustion of the last hours finally breaking through. "I want Mama. I want Mama. She's right outside. I called her from the cockpit. She's been waiting." Elijah looked at the paramedics. "I'm riding with her to the hospital." "Sir, we need to stabilize her first. I'm her father, and I'm not leaving her side. You can work around me, or you can wait until I'm ready to move. Your choice." The paramedic, seeing the look in his eyes, chose to work around him. As they carefully transferred Amara to a stretcher, security approached Vanessa in the back of the plane. One officer spoke quietly but firmly. "Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us." Vanessa stood on shaking legs, wrists already extended for handcuffs she knew were coming. Every passenger watched her walk of shame down the aisle. Some faces showed satisfaction. Some showed pity. Mr. Patterson's showed nothing at all. As Vanessa passed Amara's stretcher, she stopped. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm so sorry." Elijah's voice was ice. "Keep moving." Security led her away. The Los Angeles sun beat down on the tarmac temperature, hovering around 85 degrees. Amara squinted against the brightness as paramedics wheeled her stretcher down the aircraft stairs. Elijah walking alongside, holding her good hand. And a V. And a V. Without. And a V. Without. Without a V. And a V. Without 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 a V. At the bottom of the stairs, a woman broke through the security barrier. Amara baby. Simone Jennings had been beautiful once. Was beautiful still, though 2 years of single parenting and 60-hour work weeks as a hospital administrator had added lines around her eyes and silver threads through her black hair. She wore scrubs from her shift, having come straight from work when Elijah's call came through. Mama Amara reached out with her good arm. Simone ran to the stretcher, gathering her daughter as carefully as she could, pressing kisses to Amara's forehead, her cheeks, her hair. "My baby. My sweet baby. What did they do to you?" For the first time since the divorce, Elijah and Simone's eyes met without anger or resentment, just shared fear for their child, shared fury at what had happened, shared determination that justice would be served. "I'm riding in the ambulance," they said simultaneously, then almost smiled at the synchronicity. "There's only room for one." "Then make room for two," Elijah said flatly. "We're both going." The paramedics, sensing this was not a battle worth fighting, squeezed them both into the ambulance. As they pulled away, sirens wailing the news, cameras captured everything. The footage would be on social media within minutes. Numbered Justice for Amara would be trending nationwide within the hour. At the airport, investigators from the FAA were already boarding the aircraft. Chelsea and every passenger who'd witnessed the assault gave statements. Videos emerged from passenger phones showing Vanessa's treatment of Amara, showing the moment the bone broke, showing everything. Mr. Patterson tried to leave quietly, but found his path blocked by reporters. "Sir, passengers say you made comments supporting the flight attendant's treatment of the child. Care to comment?" His face flushed crimson. No comment. He pushed through, but his name had already been captured. By evening, his employer would be fielding calls demanding his termination. Mrs. Whitaker stood in front of cameras willingly, her lawyer's voice clear and strong. "I watched a child be systematically dehumanized and ultimately assaulted simply because the flight attendant didn't believe a black girl deserved to occupy a first-class seat. This is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern of discrimination that happens every single day in airports, on planes, in hotels, in restaurants. The only difference today is that the child's father happened to be flying the plane. But what about all the children whose fathers aren't captains? Who speaks for them?" The airline's corporate offices erupted into crisis mode. By noon Pacific time, the CEO had released a statement. "We are horrified by the events on Flight 743. The employee in question has been terminated effective immediately. We are conducting a full investigation and cooperating completely with law enforcement. We extend our deepest apologies to the Jennings family and are implementing immediate mandatory anti-discrimination training for all staff. But words were cheap. Amara knew that now. Actions mattered. At Children's Hospital, Los Angeles doctors examined her arm with gentle efficiency. The radius bone had snapped clean through. She'd need surgery to set it with pins. Would need a cast for 6 to 8 weeks. Might need physical therapy. Will she have permanent damage? Simone asked, gripping Elijah's hand without realizing she was doing it. Hard to say until after surgery, the orthopedic surgeon replied. But kids heal remarkably well. I'm optimistic she'll make a full recovery physically. Physically, the word hung unspoken. But what about emotionally? What about the scars nobody could see? While Amara was in surgery, Elijah and Simone sat in the waiting room side by side, not quite touching, but closer than they'd been in 2 years. I should have been there, Simone whispered. Should have flown with her. I was there, Elijah replied, voice hollow. I was literally flying the plane and I couldn't protect her. I heard everything through the intercom, but I couldn't leave the cockpit until Chelsea called a medical emergency. You got there. You stood up for her. You made sure there would be consequences. Will there be real consequences? Elijah's hands clenched into fists. Or will this fade into another news cycle while nothing changes? They sat in silence, waiting, hoping, praying. The surgery took 3 hours. When Amara woke in recovery, both parents were there, one on each side of her bed. Her arm was encased in bright purple fiberglass. Her choice of color, the nurse said, made while still groggy from anesthesia. Purple like royalty, like strength, like the flowers that grew through concrete. Hey baby, Elijah smoothed her hair back. Surgery went perfectly. You're going to be just fine. Daddy, are you staying? Amara's voice came out thick with medication. Or do you have to fly back? I'm staying. I have 3 weeks of vacation saved up, and I'm using every single day. I'm not leaving you. Simone smiled, tears streaming down her face. We're both staying. We're both right here. For the first time in hours, Amara's face relaxed into something like peace. Washington, D.C. in January felt cold enough to crack bones. Temperature hovered at 28 degrees Fahrenheit as crowds gathered outside the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Inside the warm auditorium, 2,000 people filled seats that faced a stage draped in purple and gold. Amara Jennings walked onto that stage with her head held high. Her arm had healed. The cast had come off 8 weeks ago. Physical therapy had restored full range of motion. The only visible reminder was a thin scar on her forearm, where the bone had torn through skin. But she carried other scars, the kind that woke her up sometimes at night, heart racing, remembering the moment her arm broke. The kind that made her tense up when white strangers looked at her too long. The kind that would probably never fully heal but had taught her more about the world than any 12-year-old should have to learn. She wore a purple dress today. Her natural hair, no longer in cornrows, formed a cloud of tight curls around her face. At her neck hung a small gold necklace her grandmother had given her, inscribed with the words, "Nevertheless, she persisted." The moderator, a renowned civil rights activist, smiled warmly. Amara, thank you for being here today at the Young Voices for Change Summit. Can you tell us about what happened 6 months ago? Amara gripped the microphone. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. 6 months ago, I was 12 years old, flying alone to see my mother. I had a first-class ticket that my mom bought with miles she'd been saving for 2 years. From the moment I stepped on that plane, I was treated like I didn't belong. Like the color of my skin meant I wasn't good enough to sit in a nice seat. When I asked to use the bathroom, the flight attendant broke my arm. She paused, letting that sink in. 2,000 people sat in absolute silence. But that's not the end of my story. Because my father, who I didn't know was flying the plane, came out of the cockpit, and he stood up for me. And he made sure that woman faced consequences. And he showed me that even when the world tries to break you, even when people treat you like you're less than human, there are still people who will fight for you. In the front row, Elijah and Simone sat side by side, They'd been back together for 4 months now, taking it slow, going to couples counseling, rebuilding what had broken. Not for themselves, for Amara. Though they were discovering they'd never stopped loving each other, they'd just forgotten how to show it. Beside them sat Grandmother Loretta, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. 2 rows back, Mrs. Whitaker beamed with pride, having flown from Atlanta just to hear Amara speak. "I want to tell every kid who looks like me, who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong somewhere," Amara continued. "You belong everywhere. Every single space you have the right to occupy, you belong there. Don't let anyone make you small. Don't let anyone convince you that you're less than you are. And if someone tries to hurt you, speak up. Tell someone, because your voice matters." The applause was thunderous. Backstage, after her speech, reporters clustered. But Amara felt different now than she had 6 months ago. Not scared, not small, strong. Amara Vanessa Hartley's trial starts next month. How do you feel about that? "I hope she gets help," Amara said carefully. "I hope she learns why what she did was wrong. But I also hope the judge makes sure she can never hurt another child." "Your family sued the airline. The settlement was reportedly substantial." "My parents set up a foundation," Amara replied. "The Jennings Foundation for Aviation Equity. It provides scholarships for kids of color who want to become pilots. Because I learned something important. The best way to change a system that doesn't see you is to become part of that system and change it from the inside." "Do you want to be a pilot, like your father?" Amara's smile was radiant. "Yeah, I do. I want to fly." The press conference ended. Amara's family surrounded her, a protective wall of love. They walked together to a nearby restaurant, one that Simone had reserved for a private celebration. Over dinner, they toasted to healing, to justice, to new beginnings. Elijah raised his glass. "To my daughter, the bravest person I know." To Amara, Simone echoed, "Who taught us all what strength looks like." To family, Grandmother Loretta added, "The ones we're born with and the ones we choose." Mrs. Whitaker, who'd been invited to join them, raised her glass last. "To the next generation, may they inherit a better world than we did. And may they have the courage to keep making it better still." They drank. They ate. They laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. Later that evening, back at Simone's house, Amara stood in front of her bedroom mirror. Behind her, pinned to the wall, were newspaper clippings about her case. About Vanessa's arrest. About the airline's policy changes. About the 3 other flight attendants who'd been fired after passengers came forward with similar stories. Change was happening. Slowly. Imperfectly. But happening. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chelsea, the flight attendant who'd stayed in touch. "Just finished my first day teaching the new anti-discrimination training module for crew members. Used your story with permission. Every single person in that room looked shaken. I think we're finally getting through. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up." Amara texted back a purple heart emoji. She looked at herself in the mirror. The same face, the same brown skin, the same tight curls, but different eyes. Eyes that had seen the worst of humanity and the best. Eyes that had cried tears of pain and tears of triumph. She thought about Mr. Patterson, who'd lost his job and his reputation, who'd released a video apology that seemed sincere, talking about his own biases and privilege, about how he was working to be better. She'd accepted his apology, though forgiveness would take longer. She thought about Vanessa awaiting trial, who wrote letters every week that Amara didn't read, but her parents kept in a folder just in case someday she wanted to. She thought about all the Amaras still out there, flying alone, eating alone, existing alone in spaces that didn't want them, who didn't have a father flying the plane to save them. She picked up her journal and began to write. "Dear future me, remember this feeling. Remember that you survived. Remember that your voice has power. Remember that change is possible, but it requires people to speak up even when they're scared. Especially when they're scared. Today I spoke to 2,000 people. 6 months ago I could barely speak through the pain. But here I am, still standing, still fighting, still believing that the world can be better. Tomorrow I start training for the youth aviation program. Daddy's going to teach me how planes work, how to read instruments, how to think like a pilot. Someday, I'm gonna fly one. And when I do, I'm gonna make sure every single passenger on my aircraft feels welcome, feels safe, feels like they belong. Because everyone deserves to fly with dignity. Love, Amara. She closed the journal and looked out her window at the Los Angeles night sky. Somewhere up there, planes were carrying people across continents, carrying dreams, carrying hope. Someday she'd be up there too. So here's my question for you. What would you have done if you witnessed what happened to Amara? Would you have spoken up, or would fear have kept you silent? Comment your honest answer below, because these conversations matter. They create awareness. They spark change. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it gave you hope, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell, because we share stories like this every single week. Stories that matter. Stories that challenge us to be better. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with your family, your friends, your coworkers. Because Amara's story isn't just about one girl on one flight. It's about every person who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong simply because of how they look. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being the kind of person who believes that justice matters and that every child deserves to feel safe. Until next time, remember that your voice has power. Use it, speak up, stand up, make a difference. And to every young person out there facing discrimination, facing hatred, facing people who try to make you small, remember Amara's words. You belong everywhere. Every single space you have the right to occupy, you belong there. Stay strong, stay brave, and never stop believing that you can change the world. See you in the next story. This story reveals profound truths about systemic racism and the courage required to confront it. First, discrimination thrives in silence. Every passenger who watched Amara suffer without speaking up became complicit in her pain. Bystander intervention matters. Second, authority figures have immense power to either perpetuate injustice or stop it cold. Captain Jennings used his position to protect his daughter and demand accountability, showing how leadership should operate. Third, children absorb messages about their worth from how society treats them. Amara learned she had to fight for basic dignity, a lesson no 12-year-old should need. Fourth, institutional change requires public pressure. The airline only implemented reforms after media attention made inaction impossible. Fifth, healing from discrimination takes time and community support. Amara needed her family, Mrs. Whitaker, and allies to recover emotionally. Sixth, speaking truth to power creates ripple effects. Amara's testimony inspired policy changes that protected countless future passengers. Finally, resilience doesn't mean forgetting trauma, but transforming it into purpose. Amara channeled her pain into advocacy, proving that victims can become agents of change. These lessons remind us that combating racism requires active participation, institutional accountability, and unwavering commitment to human dignity for all people, regardless of skin color. What lessons hit home hardest for you from Amara's journey? Drop a comment sharing which moment made you angriest or most hopeful, because your voice adds to this crucial conversation. If you believe every child deserves respect, regardless of race, hit that like button to spread this message further. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful racism stories that expose injustice and celebrate courage. Share this video with family, friends, and co-workers who need reminding that staying silent enables discrimination. Thank you for watching until the end. Thank you for caring enough to listen to Amara's story. Thank you for being someone who believes change is possible when good people refuse to stay quiet. May you find courage to speak up when you witness injustice. May you use whatever privilege or platform you have to protect the vulnerable. May you remember that every voice matters in the fight for equality. Stay blessed, stay aware, and keep fighting for a world where all children fly safely.